Learn Something in Life Gospel for YPU. No copyright. The Gospel of John, Chapter 11 Version 1, 4 and 6. Learn Something in Life, from the story of Lazarus. From the New Testament. The Gospel of John, Chapter 11 Version 1, 4 and 6. Learn Something in Life, from the story of Lazarus. From the New Testament. Verse 1. There was a man lying sick. Lazarus from Bethany, from the village where Mary and her sister Martha lived. Verse 4. When Jesus heard it, he said, "This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified in it." Verse 6. Even though he now heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed 2 days in the place where he was. Before Jesus received the news of Lazarus' illness, Martha and Mary had sent word to him with the message, "Lord, look, the one you love is sick." In their distress, the sisters sent for Jesus, who they knew was capable of helping Lazarus. There are 4 things that are good to think about in relation to the story of Lazarus. A close relative of Martha and Mary, Lazarus, who believed in Jesus, and who was even loved by him, was sick to death. Martha and Mary sent messengers to Jesus for help. Jesus confesses that the disease is not for death, but for the glory of God. Jesus stayed 2 more days where he was before going to Bethany to raise Lazarus from the dead. What can we then possibly learn from the 4 things? First, we can learn that even living Christians who love Jesus can find themselves in perilous difficulties. Difficulties even so great that they can be a threat to the life of a Christian. Lazarus was loved by Jesus, but Lazarus was sick, and the disease ended in taking his life. Second, we can learn that Martha and Mary did, as any hopeful Christian, as well as a non-Christian person, should always do in the midst of distress, on behalf of themselves or others. They sent messages to Jesus for help and deliverance. The one you love is very sick. Jesus, you must intervene, otherwise it is out with him. Third, we can learn that Jesus always gets the best out of any painful situation. Jesus will not allow death, suffering to have the last word, in any situation. If we have asked Jesus for help, then he will let the glory of God appear, in the most blessing way, so that the help always ends with the glorification of himself and the Father. Fourth, we can learn that Jesus does not always fulfill one's desires and needs right away, not necessarily, despite the fact that in distress we ask him for help. Jesus may find time to drag out if he thinks this is the best thing for the situation and everyone else involved, be it in one way or another. Jesus may intervene as soon as you pray to him, but does not always necessarily do so. Such a thought clearly testifies to the story of Lazarus. But, on top of these thoughts about the incident with Lazarus, what else can we learn from it? For example, how should we think and act if we interpreted our own lives into the situation? If we are in a hopeless situation, then we must be careful not to let grief and hopelessness take over our thoughts and feelings. This can be difficult, for trials, and human misfortune, after all, is basically not nice for anyone. But, if we are children of God, and have we prayed to the Father for help, he blesses in due time, even though all the signs around us clearly testify against God's intervention. God is greater than all and knows all. We cannot always expect God to intervene in human life in the same way every time. Often it can be different how He chooses to deal with us. An example of this we can read later in the same chapter in version 37–38. But some of them said, "Could not He, Jesus, who opened the eyes of the blind man, have prevented this man from dying?" Jesus had healed a man born blind in the Gospel of John earlier. Then Jesus became angry again and went to the tomb, Lazarus' tomb. Jesus could easily have healed Lazarus before he died, but had He done so, God would not have been glorified to the same extent as when Lazarus was resurrected, just from the dead. We must believe against all human odds. Although all hope of help from God seems far away. Try to read what Martha says to Jesus in version 39, "Lord, he already stinks. It's the 4th day." Jesus answers her, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" Live again, despite the fact that everything looked hopeless, humanly speaking. Finally, we can finally learn from Jesus's own prayer in the same chapter, as He, on top of all the hardships surrounding the resurrection of Lazarus, turns His eyes to heaven and says, "Father, I thank you for hearing my prayers. I knew you always hear my prayers." Jesus is the same yesterday, today and yes forever. God's wisdom and love, as it is partly described here, applies to everyone. And it can be a wonderful life and a great truth, for the one who will surrender his heart to Jesus. Just pray to God and He can and will intervene at the right time.